The classroom was silent, but not the kind of silence that comes with respect. It was the heavy, mocking silence that comes just before laughter, when people are waiting for a mistake to pounce on. The door creaked open, and all eyes turned to the figure stepping in. She was young, too young, some thought, to be a teacher. Her frame was delicate, her clothes simple, her eyes nervous but determined. She placed her books on the desk, cleared her throat, and softly introduced herself. "Good morning, I'm Miss Evelyn Hart. I'll be your new homeroom teacher." For a fleeting second there was peace, almost curiosity. Then came the snickers, the whispered comments, the cruel stares. By the time she began roll call, the classroom had already decided she was prey. Before we dive deeper into this powerful story, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to Always Kind, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. It helps us bring you more stories that touch the heart and open the mind. Evelyn's hand trembled as she held the roster, calling out names. Students answered half-heartedly, some mocking her tone, others exchanging glances. She pushed forward, determined not to let their immaturity crack her resolve. But just when she thought she had regained some control, a chair scraped loudly across the floor. One of the notorious bullies, Jason, a tall boy with arrogance carved into every movement, stood and smirked. "Miss Hart," he drawled, "aren't teachers supposed to look professional?" His words dripped with mockery as his gang of friends chuckled. Evelyn froze, unsure how to respond, when suddenly another hand yanked at her blouse from behind. There was the sound of fabric tearing, sharp, cruel, humiliating. Her shirt split at the shoulder seam, exposing the edge of her undershirt. Laughter erupted. Not just giggles but loud, ugly roars that seemed to echo off the walls. Her face flushed crimson, her throat closed tight. She gripped the torn fabric to her chest, her heart pounding with both fear and shame. She turned, and for the briefest moment, they saw her eyes. They weren't just embarrassed eyes of a young teacher. They were fierce, hurt eyes that carried storms. Yet the laughter continued, and Evelyn fled from the room, the sound of jeers following her into the hallway. For many, that would have been the end. A resignation, a breakdown, another story of a teacher crushed by cruelty. But Evelyn Hart was not ordinary. What no one in that classroom knew was that behind her fragile appearance, she carried a history carved by resilience and discipline. She wasn't just a teacher. She was once an elite martial artist who had stepped away from the competitive world after a personal tragedy. Teaching was her second chance, her quiet way of giving back. But when they tore her shirt, they tore into something deeper. Evelyn didn't cry. Instead, she stood in the empty staff room, and holding her shirt together, and let the silence wash over her. She thought of her late father, who had taught her how to fight, not just with fists, but with dignity. "Strength isn't about striking first, Evie," he had told her. "It's about knowing when to stand tall, even when the world tries to shrink you." She took a deep breath, wiped her eyes, and resolved she would not run away. She would return to that classroom, not with anger, but with the kind of presence that demanded respect. When the bell rang for second period, whispers buzzed through the corridors. Students who had witnessed the incident told others, exaggerating every detail. By the time Evelyn returned to her class, patched shirt neatly pinned, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The bullies leaned back smug, certain she would stumble or shout. But Evelyn's calmness unsettled them. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she began writing on the board, her back straight, her movements precise. "Today," she said evenly, "we'll be learning about the power of words and actions, how they can shape lives." The students shifted uneasily. This wasn't the broken woman they expected. This was someone steady, unshaken, someone who was about to turn the tables. Jason scoffed loudly, tossing a paper ball at the desk. "Why don't you just admit you don't belong here?" he sneered. But before he could laugh again, Evelyn turned. In one swift motion, she caught the ball midair, her reflexes sharp, honed from years of discipline. The room fell silent, her eyes locked on Jason's, not with anger, but with piercing clarity. She walked toward him, placed the paper ball on his desk, and said softly, "The world is watching who you become. Every action you take writes your story. Is this really the story you want to tell?" For the first time, Jason faltered. His friends shifted, glancing uneasily at one another. Evelyn didn't stop there. She continued teaching, weaving her personal story into the lesson, how she, too, had once been mocked, underestimated, pushed to the edge. How she had chosen to rise above it, to fight not with fists but with her determination to become something greater. Her voice carried weight, each word striking deeper than any reprimand could. Slowly the laughter faded, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. But it wasn't until Evelyn demonstrated her true strength that the classroom transformed. When another bully snatched her marker and tried to draw on the board, she moved with lightning speed, pinning his wrist gently but firmly, her stance unshakable. She didn't hurt him, but her control left no doubt she could. The class gasped. Whispers of, "Did you see that?" rippled through the room. For the first time, the bullies realized they weren't dealing with someone weak. They were dealing with someone who carried both power and grace. Minutes later, the bullies sat quieter than they ever had, their faces pale, their arrogance melted away. Jason, once the loudest voice, was the first to lower his head. "Miss Hart, I'm sorry," he muttered. His friends echoed him, their apologies awkward but sincere. Evelyn didn't gloat. She simply nodded and said, "Respect isn't something you're born with. It's something you earn, by giving it to others first." That day, the classroom changed. The students who once mocked her began to listen, to see her not just as a teacher, but as someone they could look up to. Weeks later, the story of what happened that morning spread beyond the classroom, becoming a lesson whispered across the school.